The breaking point. One Tuesday, the sky decided to empty itself over the city. Clara arrived drenched, her usual brightness dampened by a heavy coat and a heavier expression. She didn't look at the shelves. She went straight to the counter. "I'm moving," she said. The words felt like a draft in a room Elias thought was sealed tight. London for the gallery job. Elias felt the familiar urge to retreat into his margins. He wanted to say something poetic, something like a line from the Brontes. Instead, he reached under the counter and pulled out a small, weathered volume he'd been holding for weeks. "You'll need this," he said, his voice steadier than his hands. It wasn't a romance novel. It was an old atlas of London from 1920. The annotation. "It's outdated," Clara whispered, flipping through the yellowed maps. "The streets have changed," Elias admitted, "but the landmarks haven't." He paused, then pointed to the very back page, where he had scribbled a phone number next to a hand-drawn compass rose. "I'm a landmark. If you get lost, or if you just want to tell someone about a book you hated, I'm still here." Clara looked up, the rain on her lashes finally giving way to a smile that reached her eyes. She didn't say she'd stay. Real love doesn't always demand a sacrifice of dreams, but she reached across the counter and squeezed his hand. "I've never been very good at navigation," she said. "I think I'll be calling for directions quite often." Love, Elias realized as she stepped back into the rain, isn't always a finished novel. Sometimes it's just a really good prologue.
Bob and the Spectral Hotel. It was close to midnight when Bob found himself on a foggy street clutching his travel bag. He was tired, cold, and desperate for shelter when a glowing vacancy sign flickered in the window of a once grand hotel. The building loomed over him, its windows aglow with a faint golden light. Rain began to fall in heavy drops. With a deep breath, Bob pushed open the creaking doors and entered the shadowy lobby. The inside was silent, save for the ticking of a dusty grandfather clock. Crimson carpets ran across marble floors, and grand chandeliers dangled above. In the center of the lobby, a solitary figure sat in a velvet chair, shrouded in shadow. Bob hesitated, his footsteps echoing as he approached. The man, old and pale, looked up. His eyes seemed to flicker like candlelight. "This hotel is not normal," the stranger whispered, voice low. "Beware what you seek here." Before Bob could reply, the man vanished into the gloom. With a shiver, Bob forced himself forward to the reception desk. A faded bell sat beside an ancient guest book. He signed his name, barely noticing the smudged, archaic handwriting from guests long past. The room key slid across the counter by unseen hands. Room 001. His footsteps echoed endlessly as he followed a narrow corridor. The air grew colder and the lights dimmer with each step. Shadows moved at the edges of his vision, but when he looked closer, there was nothing there. Bob reached the heavy oak door marked 001. The brass numbers felt icy beneath his fingers. He unlocked it and stepped inside. A cold gust whistled past, extinguishing the hallway lights and plunging the corridor behind him into darkness. The room was lavish but eerie, a four-poster bed, Velvet drapes fluttering through the windows were closed, and an old mirror facing a fireplace. Lightning flickered outside, and in its glow, ghostly figures seemed to shimmer in the mirror's depths. Bob's heart pounded, but curiosity overcame his fear. He approached the mirror, and with each step, the spectral reflections revealed a fragment of the hotel's past. A grand party, guests in old-fashioned attire, a sudden tragedy, screams echoing until abruptly silenced. Suddenly the air thickened and a chilling wind circled him. The room shimmered. Bob heard a girl's voice whisper, "Set us free." Shadows danced across the walls, and the shapes of former guests stepped out from the corners, not menacing, but pleading. Though afraid, Bob drew upon his courage. He searched the room, recalling the stranger's warning and relying on his imagination to guide him. He found an ancient locket beneath the fireplace, its surface etched with a crest matching the hotel's sign. Opening the locket, a golden light burst forth. The spirits gathered around, their forms softening. "Thank you," the girl's voice whispered again. "Our story is yours to remember." The air warmed as the spectral guests faded, their faces finally at peace. Exhausted and bewildered, Bob returned the locket to its hiding spot. As dawn crept through the curtains, the hotel's chill lifted. He packed his bag and left room 01, the hall no longer echoing with unseen footsteps. In the lobby, the velvet chair was empty. The old clock chimed softly, and sunlight poured through the dusty windows. Bob stepped out of the hotel and onto the quiet street, tucking the memory of his night and the courage he'd found close to his heart. As he glanced back, the hotel's facade gleamed anew, the shadows of the night gone. Bob smiled, knowing he had helped free the hotel's secrets, and that his imagination had turned a haunting into a tale of bravery. From that night onward, Bob became a storyteller, weaving tales of courage and adventure, knowing better than anyone the power imagination holds in even the darkest of places.